Welcome back to Bonkers for Boro. And Middlesbrough have got another huge match coming up at the weekend with the club taking on Millwall at the Den on Saturday afternoon. Now, Middlesbrough's playoff hopes have been boosted in the last few weeks. Things looked like we were really kind of falling away from the playoff picture. It looked like the season was pretty much done. Or that's what I thought anyway. But good results against Luton and Oxford and Blackburn really put us back into the playoff picture, put us in a really strong position, and we were sitting fifth going into the match against Leeds United. Now, Middlesbrough faced Leeds on Tuesday night and it ultimately fell to a 1-0 defeat. It was a spirited performance. It was a performance that Michael Carrick's team will certainly be proud of. And they really dug in that game and could have come away with a draw, to be honest, I think, in terms of chances created and the overall sort of the way that the game sort of played out. I think Middlesbrough performed really well, probably should have come away with a point. I know that Leeds had a couple of goals disallowed, but Middlesbrough could probably feel a little bit hard done by that they didn't come away with more, but it's just really set things up nicely for the clash with Millwall. Now, looking at the Championship table, things are really starting to heat up at the top of the table there. It used to be, or previous to the Leeds match, it was two of four teams who were going to be challenging for fifth and sixth spot in the Championship table. You're kind of looking at Bristol City and Coventry and Middlesbrough and West Brom as the four teams who were in there. Middlesbrough were obviously sitting in fifth place, and you were kind of looking at two of those four, but positive results for both Millwall and Watford have brought them into the picture. Yes, they're on the periphery of that playoff push, but really they're very much in the mix. I think a couple of good results for them will put them right in there. And for Middlesbrough, that's not really good news. I think Middlesbrough are wanting to keep it kind of as simple as possible. If there's only four teams, then your odds are relatively good of being able to get in there. But with six teams potentially in there, it does make things a little bit more complicated, particularly now that Middlesbrough have got work to do. That defeat against Leeds United, followed by obviously Bristol City got their victory on Tuesday night, and then Coventry got a win against Portsmouth on Wednesday. It's meant that Bristol City and Coventry are the two sides that are holding the two spots in the Championship top six. Bristol City sitting in fifth, Coventry in sixth. Bristol City have got 63 points, Coventry have got 62. Middlesbrough, as a result of that defeat against Leeds, have dropped down to seventh on 60. So 2 points off the playoffs, 3 points off fifth place. So still very much all to play for, but Middlesbrough definitely need to be getting a couple of good results now. It's the momentum has sort of shifted, the pendulum swung, whatever the cliche is that you want to use. Middlesbrough are now in the position where they're the ones who need to make up a little bit of ground. And I think when you look at the fixtures the Middlesbrough have got coming up, there's certainly a big opportunity to do that. You look at the fact that we've got, after this weekend, you've got a home clash with Plymouth, then you've got Sheffield Wednesday away, then you've got the likes of Norwich, and then obviously on the final day, you've got Coventry City, who will be playing. So there's the opportunity there for Middlesbrough to get some good results. But this weekend's match against Millwall, it's really taken on some added significance. It was always going to be a difficult match. It was always going to be a fixture that was a potential banana skin for Middlesbrough. Obviously, going down to London, to Bermondsey, facing Millwall at the Den. It's the stereotypical tough away day. You know that you're going to be in for a tough afternoon when you go to the Den. You know they're going to make it difficult for you, and that was always going to be the case. But with Millwall's results also improving, it means that this match has taken on real added significance, and it could be make or break for both teams looking at that. So Millwall are currently sitting in ninth position in the table. They're on 57, so they're 3 points behind Middlesbrough. There's quite a significant difference in goal difference, 12 goals in total. So a victory for Millwall at the weekend would, yes, it would put them level on points with Middlesbrough, but Middlesbrough would still be ahead on goal difference. But Middlesbrough don't want to be playing that game. They don't want Millwall to be getting 3 points and drawing themselves level, because that would really push them up into a contention. If they're on 60 points, they are firmly in the mix, and that's not what Middlesbrough want to see. It would also obviously mean that Middlesbrough have missed the opportunity to get back to winning ways, or add some points to their tally. Obviously, you don't know what's going to go on with Bristol City and Coventry. Bristol City, I believe, are playing QPR this weekend. I think Coventry have got Hull City, or vice versa. So there's two quite winnable games there as far as those two teams are concerned. And for Middlesbrough, that is a little bit of a concern. They need to get a win against Millwall this weekend if they are going to be kind of pushing themselves back into contention. Yes, there's a couple of winnable games coming up after that, but you don't want to be in a situation where Middlesbrough have lost against Millwall, lost ground, and then all of a sudden Bristol City or Coventry are in a position where they're on 64 or 65 points, and there begins to be a bit of a gap opening up and a bit of daylight between the clubs. Middlesbrough don't want to be needing to get 2 wins, for example, to be closing that gap. They really need to stay on Bristol City and Coventry's tails if they are going to be getting into the playoff places, and that's why Saturday's trip to Millwall is going to be a really, really difficult one as far as that's concerned. So if you look at Millwall and how they've performed this season, you know what you're getting from Millwall. They're a really, really tough team. They're a side who always make it difficult for any side, both home and away. They're a side who I always think they always seem to be in that kind of chasing pack. They might not always get into the playoffs, but they're always roughly in that pack from 6th down to 10th. That sort of chasing pack, just maybe haven't quite got the quality to get into the top 6, but have always very much there or thereabouts. And you look at Millwall's attack. Coburn on loan this season, and he's done well while he's been fit. He had a lengthy injury which kept him out for a good few months, but he's come back. I mean, he scored some really important goals for them. He scored the other winning goal against Sheffield United just a few days ago, and he's a player who will be hoping to have a big hand in the rest of the season for Millwall as they hope to get into the top 6. There's also a bit of speculation that Millwall are interested in signing him on a permanent basis come the summer. So obviously he'll be very keen to make an impression, because it does seem like his future is going to be away from Middlesbrough come the summer. So a move to Millwall could be the perfect opportunity for him to do that. And my word, if he was to earn a move to Millwall and had got into the top 6, or they were potentially even in the Premier League next season, then that would be quite remarkable. But he's done really, really well. He's scored a good few goals, but generally their attacking players left a fair bit to be desired. It's probably the reason that they're not higher up in the table, but certainly they've earned their place in the playoff push as it stands at the moment. You look at their defence. That's a little bit better. You can see really that this is where their strengths lie in terms of their XG, in terms of goals conceded. It's 44.6, so it's pretty good. Obviously, they're 18th in the table for that, but that's in reverse order, if that sort of makes sense. So that's pretty good. Interceptions in a game, they're second in the table with 9.8 per match on average. Tackles, top of the table with 12.8 per match, and clearances per match, 6th. They're in there. Possession won in the final third. They're 8th. Penalties conceded, 17th, which again is good. So really defensively, they're quite a solid outfit. They're a side who are built on a foundation of a strong defence. They're a team who aren't blessed with loads of goals, but they do keep things tight. They do make things tough, and they are able to grind out a positive result when they need to. You only have to look at the manager, Alex Neil. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's been in the Championship for a number of years. He's obviously someone that Middlesbrough know fairly well. Obviously, we've had a playoff run-in with him in the past. He was, of course, in charge of Norwich City when Middlesbrough got beaten at Wembley back in the 2014-15 season. Norwich did a number on us that day, and they know exactly how to get through those games. So if Millwall were to get into the top 6, you'd be foolish to bet against them potentially doing very well and certainly progressing potentially into the final, because Alex Neil has a strong game plan. He knows how to grind out results, and that's exactly why Millwall are in the really strong position that they're in at the moment. So they're going to be a really tough task for Middlesbrough this week, and they're going to make things difficult. Potentially, it could play into Middlesbrough's hands. Middlesbrough do like to get on the ball. They do like to dominate. It was difficult to do it against a side like Leeds because they've just got such quality in their side, but also on the bench. But against Millwall, you do expect that Middlesbrough will be the side who will have the majority of the possession, that they'll probably create the majority of the chances, and it'll probably come down to whether Millwall's defence can handle Middlesbrough's attack. If Middlesbrough can break them down, I think you'll be looking at a sort of low block from Millwall. Middlesbrough will need to have their creative players on top form. You're looking at people like Finn Azaz. He's going to need to be on his game. Delano Bergzorg, he did well against Leeds. He was keen to make something happen. He was very keen to run it as defender, but his end product wasn't quite there. That's going to need to sharpen up against Millwall. Kelechi Iheanacho, I think he needs to offer a lot more than he did against Leeds. He did sort of go missing after a more promising couple of games against Oxford and Blackburn. And Tommy Conway, he was quiet against Leeds as well. He worked very, very hard, but didn't really get the openings to really show what he can sort of do. So Middlesbrough will be hoping that he can come back to the sort of form that he showed, certainly against Blackburn, where he looked absolutely lethal in front of goal with that Dennis Bergkamp-esque effort. Middlesbrough are going to have to be on their game against Millwall. They're going to make it difficult, but Millwall are more than capable of grabbing a goal as well. Obviously, Josh Coburn's on loan with Millwall this season, so he's going to be ineligible to face Middlesbrough. The ruling is usually that players aren't able to face their parent club, which is probably good news for Middlesbrough, because wouldn't that just be typical if he was the person to get a goal? But he won't be able to play in that one, so that is good news, and that Millwall will be without one of their most dangerous strikers. But certainly, I think it's going to be a really intriguing contest. Millwall, their confidence is going to be high. They know that they need to win this game. I think Middlesbrough probably do need to win this fixture as well to close that gap on the top six. But Millwall, they've kind of pushed themselves into the playoff picture, but they really need to keep winning these games because they're not quite there yet. A victory against Middlesbrough will put them firmly in the mix for the playoffs, but they just need to keep that winning run if they are going to be getting in there. So they're going to be up for this. They're going to be desperate to go out there and get a win, and Middlesbrough are going to have to be up for the challenge. So I think in terms of the team that Middlesbrough could potentially face. Obviously, I'm recording this before Michael Carrick's press conference on Thursday afternoon. It's going to be interesting to see what team he picks. Obviously, defeat against Leeds United means that obviously we'd named a largely unchanged side for the fixtures before that. Barring Neto Borges getting injured against Blackburn, it was the same side that had faced Oxford and Blackburn, and that lined up against Leeds United. And it'll be interesting to see whether Carrick sees the temptation to change things up against Millwall, make any changes and freshen up that team. And obviously, Johnny Howson, he hadn't done a huge amount of training before he started that game against Oxford, and he started and played the entirety of all three of those matches. Dale Fry, he's now back from injury. He came off the bench late on as a sort of makeshift target man as Middlesbrough pushed to try and get back into the game against Leeds United. So obviously there's a big decision to be made there in terms of whether Dale Fry will come into the starting 11. Will he replace Johnny Howson? Will he see the opportunity to give Howson a rest? Could he potentially replace Vandenberg and have Dale Fry alongside Johnny Howson? I think I'd personally, if Johnny Howson's fit, I'd still be tempted to keep him in that starting 11. But it's also a little bit of a case of horses for courses, really. I think if Millwall are a side who play a more direct style of play, if they're going to look to try and get the other ball into the box, we saw on some of those graphics that I showed before that they are a side who like to cross the ball. They like to get the ball into the box to a big number 9 who is typically Josh Coburn. So it might be that Middlesbrough look to play with that in mind and get Dale Fry in the box. He's a more dominant figure than Johnny Howson. He's taller, he's bigger, he's stronger. He's someone who's going to win more aerial duels than Johnny Howson. So Dale Fry could potentially come into the side, but it's all going to depend on how fit he is. Elsewhere in the team, I don't see too many changes. I think Mark Travers will start in goal. You're looking at Dijksteel at right back and Illing Jr. on the left. This is obviously on the basis that there's been no major injuries in the days since the other match against Leeds United. Aidan Morris and Hayden Hackney, they've got to start in midfield because they're just absolutely quality. And they're probably the best bit of this Middlesbrough team at the moment in terms of that partnership that they're creating. Moving into the final third, I wouldn't change too much. I think I'd be tempted to drop Kelechi Iheanacho. Michael Carrick's really sort of taken a liking to him in terms of how he fits into the team in recent weeks. But for me, I think that Middlesbrough could do better in that attacking third. I think that Delano Bergzorg, he's been playing on the right more recently. I think he's better playing on the left where we can cut inside and get a shot away. Finn Azaz, he's been playing on the left. I think he's better in the centre. I think he's got more than an opportunity to get on the ball and really sort of pull the strings from there. So that's potentially what I'd be looking to do. Maybe put Bergzorg back on the left, put Finn Azaz back in the centre, and then bring Morgan Whittaker in. I think he's done really well in the last couple of games. He's had to settle for a place on the bench, but he looked really bright against Oxford. He looked really bright against Blackburn. when he came on. He didn't have a huge opportunity to do much against Leeds. I can't really recall him getting too many touches of the ball in that match, but I think he certainly deserved his opportunity. So if I was going to be making one change to the attacking lineup, I do think it would be that. I'd probably bring Morgan Whittaker on because he could certainly cause some problems for Millwall's defence. And of course, Tommy Conway will be leading the line. He's been so important to what Middlesbrough have done in the last few weeks, so he'll certainly be starting as well. So yeah, it's going to be a really interesting one. I'm not going to make a prediction for how I think this game's going to go, because this season I'm kind of beyond making predictions for how Middlesbrough are going to perform, what Middlesbrough is going to turn up. Obviously, this is a match that could go either way. It's going to be a really, really difficult test at the Den. Millwall will be well up for this, and so they'll be hopeful of getting a result. And hopefully for Middlesbrough, they'll be up for the fight, they'll be up for the battle, and they'll be able to get a win that they need to really bolster those playoff hopes and keep them moving into the Easter weekend. Easter weekend is always a sort of pivotal time when you're chasing the playoffs. And obviously, you've got 2 games in just a few days. So Middlesbrough really want to still be in the race going into that weekend, and hopefully in a really strong position. So if they can get a win against Millwall, they'll certainly be in a position to do that. So I want to hear from you. I want to know what you think about this match against Millwall and how important it is. How do you think Middlesbrough will get on at the Den? And are Middlesbrough's playoff hopes over if Middlesbrough don't get a win there? Drop into the comments below. Let me know what you think. And if you have enjoyed this video, please do hit like and subscribe. There's going to be plenty more coming over the coming weeks. And I will catch you, hopefully, after a victory at the Den. Up the Boro.